Hello, this is Olivia, and welcome to my channel, Justice in Her Hands, with a new original story. Let's begin. The toast hit the room like a dropped tray, sharp and clattering. Then the laughter rolled in, fizzy as the sparkling punch. I stood there with a paper plate sagging under lemon cake, the frosting sweet and too warm, while balloons knocked softly against each other, and the rented hall smelled of roses and plastic tablecloths. Trent grinned, an arm around Aubrey's shoulders, and said the line again for the folks who missed it, about moving me into the shed because the baby needed space. My fingertips tingled, then went numb, and I could feel my pulse in my neck. I forced my mouth into a smile that felt like it didn't belong to me. Everyone assumed the smile meant I agreed. It didn't. It meant I was done pretending. I am not some delicate thing. I am the woman who unlocks the church office at dawn, who makes sure the heat works and the choir robes are mended and the bills get paid on time. For months, I let Trent and Aubrey stay for a little while in my house because life is expensive and babies are even more so. A little while turned into boxes in the hallway, my pantry emptied by the end of every week, my name used at stores for favors I never asked for. Then came the hints about my room, how the nursery would be perfect there, how the shed out back already has a power. Little jokes, always said lightly, but they were test balloons, and I watched them rise. My fingers slid to the small envelope inside my purse. It was smooth and heavy, and I could feel the press of two sharp corners through the fabric. 1 hour earlier, Paula drove me to an office that smelled like copier toner and peppermint coffee, where a stranger verified my signature while I breathed through a knot of fear that tasted like iron. The pen scratched. The stamp clicked. The paper, my paper, moved from one pile to another. Afterward, we sat in Paula's car with the air running cold, and she asked if I was certain. I was not. But I signed anyway, because uncertainty is not the same as being wrong. Sometimes it is just the sound of a backbone growing back. Back at the party, I felt the weight of eyes. Some folks laughed because it is easier than stepping in. Some looked down at their plates like the frosting might save them. Aubrey kept rubbing her stomach, soft circles, avoiding my face. My skin prickled at the base of my hairline, that place where grief and anger both nest. I thought about the shed, the way the door sticks unless you lift while you pull, the smell of old paint and wet leaves, the cold that leaks up through the cement. I pictured myself out there in January, wrapped in coats, shuffling to the house like a stranger. I tasted cake and shame. And then, like a match in a storm, I felt a thin, bright line of calm. It ran straight from that envelope to my hands. Trent clinked his glass again and said he was only kidding, and there was a softer wave of laughter, the kind that lets people feel decent about doing nothing. I smiled wider. The lights hummed. The photographer aimed a camera, and I turned just slightly so the purse strap faced forward, not a threat. A reminder to myself. The truth was sitting in there, waiting. I could hear Paula's voice in my head, steady, not pushy, saying, "When you are ready." I studied my son's face and saw the boy who used to jump into leaves, mouth open like surprise could be swallowed whole. I also saw the man who had learned that I would say yes even when it cost me. My chest ached. My hands steadied. I set my plate down and let the room's noise wash past like a river around a rock. Not today. Not me. Not anymore. I slipped into the caterer's corridor under a string of pastel pennants, where the air smelled like dishwasher steam and lemon oil. The metal door swung once and thudded shut behind me, and the music from the hall went muffled, like it was underwater. I pressed a palm to the cool wall tile and counted my breath. In, 2, 3. Out. 2, 3. My hands were trembling, a small quiver like a bird wing, and the purse strap cut into my shoulder because I was holding it too tight. I could still hear Trent's voice in my head, that young man joking tone he uses when he wants something and doesn't want to look like he wants it. The shed. My room. My life. Reduced to a punchline with frosting. My phone buzzed. Paula. I am here if you need eyes on you. Another buzz. What you signed is yours. You choose when. I stared at the words until my pulse settled. I typed back, "Stay near," then tucked the phone away. The envelope inside the purse felt heavier than paper has a right to feel. 2 documents, thick stock. My name written clean. The seal like a pressed coin. One protects what I worked for. One sets a date that is fair and not cruel. Thinking the word date made my stomach flip. Generosity can still be a boundary, and I am out of practice with those. The door pushed open, and a woman slid in, shoulders first, a spray of hairspray and lilac perfume arriving before her. Aubrey's mother, Lorraine Poole, in a coral jacket and pearls that clicked when she smiled. "Marlene," she said, eyes quick over my face like she was reading a bulletin board. "Everything good. Big day. Our girl is glowing." She said our like it included me, and didn't include me at all. I said yes, of course, and she touched my elbow the way people do when they are softening a hard thing. "You know," she said, "we have all been thinking about logistics. It would only be temporary. That shed has power, yes. With a space heater and some curtains, it could be darling." Darling. My jaw ticked so hard I thought she might see it. Behind her, someone laughed too loud, and the laugh hit the metal shelf like a ping. I answered the way I do at church when a vendor asks for late payment, and I am counting out what is left. "Lorraine," I said, keeping my voice on level ground, "I will be in my room while I am in my house." Her smile thinned, then returned, only tighter. "Well," she said, of course, just brainstorming." She leaned in as if sharing a secret. "Aubrey needs calm, no stress late in term, so if you can go along." The phrase slid over me like oil. Go along. The old me would have. I felt heat rise to my throat and I swallowed it back, tasted metal, and stepped one pace toward the door. "I love my daughter-in-law," I said. "That is why I am done with confusion." Lorraine blinked at the word confusion, as if I had spoken a riddle. Back in the hall, the air was sugared and bright again, the kind of bright that makes your teeth ache. Paula had stationed herself by the gifts, pretending to adjust a ribbon, her presence like a hand at my back. Trent had moved to the center for games, running his mouth, making a big show of taping a diaper around a plastic doll. The crowd clapped. I watched his face and saw something slippery flicker there when he noticed I had not laughed. He looked to Aubrey, then to her mother, then to me. The trio of glances sent a chill through my shoulders. They were triangulating, measuring what they could get. A woman from church, Ida May, brushed my sleeve and whispered, "You okay, honey?" Her eyes were kind, but I heard the gossip engine idling just behind them, ready to decide if I was being difficult or if I was finally being a person. "I am all right," I said, and to my own surprise, it was true. The calm I felt earlier had returned, longer, like a steady beam across dark water. I picked up my purse, which no longer seemed so heavy, and set it on the gift table. My fingers slid the envelope under the lid of a duck-printed bag with a silver bow, Trent's name on the tag, in my neat handwriting from before I knew about the shed joke. I did not push it all the way in. I left a corner showing, white against yellow, a little flag to myself. Tonight, not tomorrow, I will not go along. Cake was served. The music turned softer. The photographer called for a family picture, and I stepped into the frame, the lights hot on my cheeks, Aubrey's belly firm against my arm. My voice shook when I said congratulations, and it was not only for the baby, it was for me, too, because fear was still in me. Yes, but it was not in charge. When Trent slung the arm around my shoulders for the camera, I did not lean into it. His hand felt heavier than it used to. He smelled like aftershave and a hint of beer. "Ma," he murmured, breath warm. "You know I was kidding." I tilted my head. "You know I was smiling," I said. The shutter clicked. Once. Twice. A small, bright thunder. The gift table creaked under towers of tissue and pastel boxes, while paper confetti stuck to my shoes like damp leaves. Aubrey perched on a rented chair, cheeks flushed, cutting ribbons with tiny gold shears, while cameras popped like distant grease in a skillet. I stood at the edge, tasting sugar and metal, and felt that quiet beam of calm again, steadier now, as if it grew ribs. Paula drifted to my side with a plate of strawberries, voice light, eyes steady. "You ready?" she asked, but not with words, just the half-tilt of her chin toward the duck-printed bag, where my white envelope peeked out like a lighthouse. I nodded, and we moved when the photographer called for a silly pose, everyone busy tugging on paper crowns. I slid the envelope free. Even through the cardstock, I could feel the crisp bite of the seal, the trust transfer for my name alone, and the second page, the one that said either we live by rules in writing or they find their own place within 60 days. Not a threat. A boundary with mercy built into the corners. The purse felt lighter the second my hand let go. Across the room, Trent tossed a foam ball in some baby game and watched me over the arc, a smile that did not reach his eyes. I could hear his small, pitched laugh, the one he uses to see what he can get for free. I caught his sleeve as the crowd surged toward cupcakes. "Walk me out," I said. He puffed himself up, performer even with no stage, and slung an arm around me like we were sweet as pie. We pushed through balloons to the back lot, where the late light lay flat and bright on the asphalt. The air smelled like hot rubber and cut grass from the field nearby. A lone cicada buzzed, then cut off like a switch. I felt sweat gather under my blouse at the spine. The parking lot was a square of hard decisions. "This is for you and Aubrey," I said, holding out the envelope, my fingers steady now. "Do not open it here." The corners of his mouth twitched. "Ma," he sang, soft and joking, "you brought homework to a baby shower?" He pinched the flap. I put my hand over his, gentle, firm. "Kitchen table," I said. 7. The word clicked in the heat like a bead on a rosary. For a second he looked 12, lost in a store aisle. Then the mask slid back on. "You know I was kidding," he said, glancing toward the hall as if there were an audience still to play to. "And you know I was smiling," I said, and felt the truth of it run from my shoulders to my heels. He weighed the envelope in his palm like it might tell him secrets by gravity alone. Paula's sedan idled near the curb, a low hum, her hands at 10 and 2, watching without staring. Lorraine pushed the door open with her hip and peered out, pearls bright as fish scales. "Everything all right?" she called. Syrup poured thin over a blade. "We're fine," I said, not looking at her, and for once the word felt like a wall that could hold. Trent let out a breath through his nose. "No drama for Aubrey," he said. "That is exactly what I want," I answered, and I meant it. The baby is not an argument to win. The baby is a person who will hear this story someday in the seams of how people act. On the walk back in, Aubrey paused me with a hand on my wrist. Her palm was warm, damp, the way worry sits in the skin. "You okay?" she whispered, pupils wide. For a sliver, I saw the girl who used to wave from their porch in the early days, a mug of cocoa between her hands, shy and hopeful. I am, I said, and let my thumb brush her knuckles. Eat a little. Put your feet up when you can. She smiled, then flinched when a burst of laughter from inside clipped too sharp. I felt a tremor in my knees, old habit wanting to fold. Go along, smooth it over. I straightened. Not today. The door sighed shut behind me, and the music swallowed us whole again. When the last ribbon fell, and the hall smelled like deflated balloons and endings, I watched Trent tuck the envelope into his jacket pocket. He smirked because he thinks paper is only paper until he says otherwise. He does not know what a stamp means, or how a deed feels once it moves. He will. At 7. I gathered my purse, thanked the caterer, and touched Paula's elbow, gratitude moving through me like a cool glass of water after a long, hot chore. The night would be long, but I was on my own porch again, in my bones, and the porch light in my mind already glowed. Dusk stained the porch boards the color of strong tea, and the jasmine by the steps let out that evening sweetness that makes you think of old summers and second chances. My key turned smooth, a tiny click that sounded louder than it should. I wiped the counter, set 3 glasses on the table, pulled the sticky note from the fridge where I had scribbled, 7 o'clock, be clear, be kind, be done. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and last night's onions, a humble mix that still felt like mine. My chest fluttered like a moth against a lamp, then settled when I saw Paula's sedan nose in beside the hydrangeas. She came in with a casserole, and her steady presence set it down like we were having any ordinary Tuesday supper, and said, "You breathe. I will pour." The water hit ice and cracked like thin glass, and I knew I had made a grown person choice, even if my knees remembered the habit of giving in. They arrived close to 7. Aubrey first, one hand in the small of her back, soft sneakers, lips pale. Trent followed with that loose, too big grin he uses when he wants to steer the weather in the room. He put the envelope on the table like a dare. "Ma," he said, "can we not do paperwork tonight?" I heard the pleading note tucked under the attitude and almost grabbed it. Almost. I sat. "Kitchen table," I said, "is where we do family and we do truth." The words felt plain and right. Paula set her glass near the napkins and looked at the clock without making a thing of it. Exactly the kind of witness I needed. Quiet, real, not going anywhere. Trent tore the flap. Paper whispered like dry leaves. He skimmed the first page, then stopped when the embossed seal caught the light. I watched understanding chase the color from his cheeks. "You moved the deed," he said, not a question. "I placed the house into a trust with me as trustee," I answered, careful, calm, each phrase set down like a plate on a table, not thrown. "That means no one can use my home for loans or plans I did not choose. It stays safe while I am alive, and afterward it goes where I say." He snorted, tried for a joke that came out dull. "So, paper magic." I let the quiet hold for a count of 3. "So, protection," I said. "This roof is not a suggestion." He flipped to the second page. The room narrowed to the scrape of his thumbnail against the staple. "House rules and occupancy," he read. Flat, then louder. 60 days? He lifted his eyes, and for a breath I saw the boy who lost his blue mitt in the church field and sobbed like the world had come apart. And I saw the man who left wet towels on my floor, like it was still my job to pick up the past. Aubrey's hand found the table edge. "What does it say exactly?" she asked, voice thin but steady. "It says we can live together by rules in writing, fair rent, utilities split in writing, chores that do not land on one person, and if that does not work for either of you, You will find your own place within 60 days. I will help with phone calls and references, I said, but I will not move into any shed. The last line shook in the air, and I let it. Truth can tremble and still be true. Paula dated the margin on her notepad and said, "We can walk through the rooms tomorrow and make an inventory, so nobody argues later about what belongs to whom." Trent pushed back in his chair. The legs squealed. My nerves answered with a little lightning behind my ribs. He said, "You are doing this to me on baby week?" The words landed hard. I tasted tin. "I am doing this for me," I said. And then, because I meant it, "and for your child, who deserves a family that does not run on confusion." Aubrey looked at the papers again, her thumb stroking the edge of the page the way she had rubbed her belly at the shower. "Boundaries are not meanness," she whispered, and no one breathed for a beat. A sharp knock rattled the front door, and we all turned. Through the glass, pearls flashed like small moons. Lorraine. Her silhouette leaned forward, decisive, carrying a bulging tote. Trent half stood. Paula's eyes met mine. My palm found the table, felt the tiny nicks and burns of a lifetime of meals and holidays and math homework, and I thought, this is where I stand. I rose, slow and sure, and walked to the foyer to choose how this story would enter my house. I opened the door only as wide as my forearm and stepped onto the porch, pulling it shut behind me until the latch kissed wood. Night air pressed cool on my cheeks. The porch light hummed and drew a jittery halo of moths. Lorraine lifted her tote like a badge, baby blue tissue rising out of it like clouds. Her perfume was lilac with a thin undernote of nerves. "Marlene," she said, voice dipped in manners. "Aubrey needs calm. Whatever this is can wait until the weekend." The words were velvet wrapped around a push. I kept my palm on the door, felt the faint vibration of voices from my kitchen. "This is a family decision," I said, even and plain. "Between the three of us. Tonight." Her smile pinched. "I am family." "You are," I said, "and I am grateful you love your daughter. But my house is not a committee." The pearls caught the porch light and flashed like tiny lighthouses, and for a second I saw how easily I used to steer by other people's shine. She tried to angle past me. I shifted one step, a gentle solid. The boards creaked. Jasmine stirred. "If you enter, you will be a witness and only a witness," I said. "No speeches." Her eyes landed on my shoulder, the old seam where I carry everyone's weight, and stayed there. Then she took a breath, straightened, and dropped her hand from the knob. "Fine," she said, which in her mouth means not fine at all. "But if Aubrey's blood pressure spikes, that is on you." The sentence hit my chest like a thrown spoon. "Her health is my priority," I said. "That is why confusion ends tonight." Lorraine blinked, recalculating the power grid, and stepped back. 10 minutes, she said. "Then I am calling." "Call who you like," I answered, and eased the door closed with a click that sounded like courage. Back in the kitchen, the casserole had cooled to a skin, and the ice in our glasses had slivered to tiny clear moons. I felt the heat of my own pulse inside my wrists. Trent sat slouched, knee jiggling, eyes flinty. Aubrey's fingers pressed the hollow at the base of her throat. A sheen of sweat brightened her hairline. Paula had moved a chair so Aubrey could lift her feet. "Sip," Paula said. And Aubrey obeyed like a woman who needed a simple yes. I took my seat and placed a pen between Trent and the papers. "We decide," I said. "We do not perform." He blew air through his lips like he was cooling soup. "You sprung this," he said. "You could have talked to me first." A hot prickle climbed the back of my neck. "I did talk." I said gently. For months. I asked. I hinted. I begged. And today, at your wife's shower, you made my bed a joke. He flinched. His gaze flicked to Paula. Is this her idea? The old reflex to defend someone else rose like a chorus in my throat. I let it pass and kept to the melody. It is my boundary, I said. Read the line about utilities, Trent. Read the part about house chores that do not land on just one pair of hands. He read. The room narrowed to paper sounds and the hum of the fridge. Outside, a car crawled by, headlights stitched across the blinds, bright then gone. Aubrey's breath hitched and she winced. I leaned forward. Braxton Hicks? She nodded, embarrassed. Like a grip that lets go, she whispered. I slid the glass closer, the condensation cold against my palm. My heart pinched, a small ache of memory and fear. I wanted to scoop up the whole room and promise it would be easy. It would not. And still. Trent tossed the pen down. It skittered, thudded against Paula's notepad. I am not signing my life away. You are choosing how to live it, I said. With clarity here, or with independence elsewhere. Either is allowed. Neither is free of cost. He stood so fast the chair legs shrieked. My ears rang. He pressed his palms flat on the table like a man holds a boat steady. You would put your own son out, he said. Voice rough. I held his eyes and felt the sting of salt gather. I would stop asking any woman in this house to disappear so a man can be comfortable, I said. The silence after was not empty. It was full as a church before the first hymn. Aubrey reached for the pen. Her hand shook, then steadied. I will sign, she said, eyes on the page. Lorraine's shadow crossed the curtain, a dark sweep of disapproval. Trent's jaw worked. He did not sit. He did not touch the pen. He spit the word fine like a seed. Start your little clock, he said. We will be gone by then. He grabbed his jacket, the envelope crinkling, and for a breath I saw the boy in him, hurt, cornered, loud, because quiet would mean listening. He stomped down the hall. The front door banged and the sound rolled through the house like thunder that does not bring rain. The door slam ricocheted through the hallway, then dissolved into the soft kitchen noises, ice settling in glasses, the fridge's low hum, Paula's pen uncapping with a tidy click. My hands buzzed like they had fallen asleep. I pressed my fingertips to the table and felt the old burn mark from a long-ago skillet, a small dark moon under my palm. Let us make a clean record, Paula said, voice the temperature of calm water. I nodded and read aloud the date, the hour, and the sentence that mattered. Trent declines to sign. 60-day notice begins now. Paula wrote it down, then slid the page to me. The pen scratched, and the sound steadied me more than any prayer I could find on short notice. Aubrey reached for the pen, mouth pale at the edges. She paused when a tight band drew across her belly. I watched the breath go thin in her throat. Sip, I said, and the cold glass kissed her lip. She signed her name in small, careful letters, then initialed the lines that said, chores do not live on one set of hands, and utilities are divided in writing. Ink glistened, then sank. Thank you, I said, and meant it deeper than the words sounded. She kept her gaze on the paper like it might hold her upright. I do not want my baby to learn that jokes are knives, she whispered. The truth of it ran through me like a bell tone. We set tomorrow's inventory for mid-morning. Kitchen, living room, garage. Keys, Paula said, as if she were asking about the weather. I pulled my ring. House, back door, garage fob. Aubrey hesitated. My mama has a spare, she said, eyes apologizing for a thing she had not done. The old me would have softened that to nothing. Please ask her to return it by tomorrow, I said instead. I will rekey the back door first thing. That is not punishment. That is peace. Paula tapped a number into her phone for a locksmith she trusts, then showed me the screen so I could see she had actually done it. Proof is kindness when nerves are raw. Lorraine's shadow drifted across the curtain again, longer this time, like a cloud that wanted to be a storm. My throat tightened, then cooled, when Paula stepped to the window and pulled the fabric aside just enough to make eye contact. Lorraine lifted her tote in a stiff salute and marched to her car. Headlights swept our room like a stage cue. No applause came. We walked Aubrey down the hall to the guest room, hers for now per the agreement, and I noticed things I had been pretending not to see. 2 laundry baskets permanent as furniture, a half-packed box that never quite closed, my grandmother's quilt folded under a stack of baby catalogs. The air was warm and a little stale, the way rooms get when decisions are afraid to move. Aubrey lowered herself to the mattress with a soft grunt. "He will cool off," she said, but the sentence had more hope than data in it. I sat on the edge of the bed and smoothed the quilt's worn star points, fabric gone thin, where hands had reached for comfort 1,000 times. "Cooling off is his job," I said. "Keeping this house clear is mine." Back in the kitchen, I opened the junk drawer and fished out the tiny screwdriver, the one that has lived there since before Trent could read. Changing the garage keypad took only a minute. My pulse took longer. The buttons clicked under my fingertip. New code, new rule, new season. Paula watched the clock and then wrote a simple sentence on the margin. Code changed. Safety. The word safety loosened a knot at the base of my neck I had not known was living there. My phone vibrated on the counter, a message from Trent that started with blame and ended with a dare. I set it face down without replying. Choosing not to argue felt like stepping off a moving walkway, odd at first, then quiet. I rinsed the glasses. The water ran cold over my knuckles until sensation returned like pins of light. "Tomorrow," Paula said, "we make a list and take pictures. You will sleep." I laughed once, short and surprised. "Sleep," I said. My body answered with a tremor of tired that arrived all at once, like a storm hitting after a breathless, hot afternoon. Before I turned in, I took the church calendar magnet and circled the date 60 days from now in red, not as a threat, as a promise to myself that this time the clock would not get talked into silence. I flipped the porch light on. The jasmine breathed. Somewhere down the block, a screen door slammed and a neighbor's dog barked twice, 3 times, then stopped. The night settled around the house I had finally, actually, claimed. In the quiet, a sudden thought lit up. Tomorrow's inventory will not be private if Lorraine has her way. I pictured a parade of opinions on my lawn, and I knew I would not be the one to whisper. Morning light came in thin and clean, the kind that shows dust you missed, and also the path forward. The locksmith's van rattled up, and when he drilled the cylinder, the air filled with a bright metal smell, like hot pennies. Tiny curls of brass fell onto a dish towel I had spread, and my heart tapped along with the bit. "Back doors rekeyed," he said, holding up the new keys on a plain ring. They clicked in my hand. Small music, steadying. Paula paid him from the envelope we set aside for exactly this and texted me the receipt. Because proof is a kindness. We started the inventory in the kitchen. Photos of the mixer that is mine, the blender that is theirs, the drawer that belongs to all. Paula read the list while I opened cabinets. Aubrey sat with a clipboard and wrote careful notes, one hand at the small of her back when a tightness rolled through. The house smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner and the faint milk-sweet scent that clings to baby catalogs. "Garage next," Paula said, then paused at the front window. A car idled at the curb. Pearls flashed. Lorraine marched up the walk with two women I recognized from the shower and a rolling suitcase that thumped each step. She lifted her chin at the doorbell like it owed her a curtsy. I cracked the door and kept my foot braced. "We are mid-inventory," I said. "Residents only." Lorraine pressed a smile against her teeth. "We are here to help pack. That shed will be darling once we clear it." My skin went cold, then hot. "There will be no shed," I said. "Please return the spare key." Her eyes snapped bright. She slid the key off her ring with theatrical reluctance and held it up like a medal. "For the record," she said, too loudly for the porch, "this is cruel to a pregnant woman." Before the old me could apologize for having a backbone, Mr. Bixby from across the street wandered over in a ball cap, hands in pockets. "Mornin'," he said, easy as a porch swing. He nodded at Paula's clipboard, then at Aubrey behind me on the chair. "Looks like y'all got a system." His voice was mild, but it pinned the moment to earth. Lorraine's ladies shifted, uncomfortable with an audience that wasn't on her side. I took the key, dropped it onto Paula's notepad, and felt a small weight leave my palm. "We do," I said. "Thank you for coming by. We will call if we need help." The door clicked soft as a heartbeat. We moved to the garage. The concrete held the night's cool. The air smelled of cut wood and gasoline. Sun came through the high window in a square, dust drifting like slow snow. Paula's camera chirped as she took wide shots. Shelving, tool bench, holiday boxes. "Label what is yours," she said, pen ready. I crouched to open a plastic bin and froze. The lid was new, the tape fresh. A strip of masking tape across the top read, in a tidy hand I did not recognize, "Mom's Winter Things." Under it, a coil space heater, an extension cord looped tight, a folded camp cot. The thought of me out there, breathing paint dust, hands numb, a wire snaking across wet grass, ran a cold river down my spine. Aubrey's breath hitched behind me. "Oh," she whispered. And then, softer, "I did not know." Paula laid a steady hand on my shoulder. The heater smelled faintly scorched, even before it was ever plugged in. I imagined it glowing cherry in January, while my house stayed warm without me. I stood, knees aching, and set the lid gently on that bin, like it might shout if I slammed it. "Take a picture," I said, voice low. "Document the label." She did, and the little shutter sound cut crisp in the quiet. I texted Trent with the photo. "Found a cot and heater labeled for me in the shed. This will not happen. All communications in writing. Inventory continues. Please confirm a time after 5 to discuss collecting your personal items." 3 dots flickered, then went dark. Outside, a breeze moved the jasmine and carried in the tinny echo of Lorraine on her phone, spinning the story the way she likes it. Inside, my hands shook just enough to make the keys sing on their ring. I let them. Sometimes a small sound is the only way to keep from breaking the larger quiet. I sent the recap email at noon, time-stamped, attached photos, the phrase, "no shed boundary," bolded, a calm pickup window between 5 and 7. The church calendar magnet on the fridge held the red circled date like a small, beating heart. By late afternoon, the heat went syrupy, cicadas rasping in the hedges, jasmine lifting a thin sweetness through the screen. I laid the inventory pages on the kitchen counter, sticky noted what was Trent's, what was shared, what was mine. Paula set her phone to video in case memory failed. Proof is kindness. At 5:15, his muffler growled up the curb. Lorraine slid out of the passenger seat with her tote and a face set to win. Mr. Bixby ambled over in that slow, steady way that says, "I am not leaving." Aubrey eased herself to the couch with a pillow under her knees, cheeks a little gray around the edges. If it tightens, you breathe, I said, and she nodded, two fingers pressing the tendon in her neck as if to count calm. Trent shouldered in with a folded box and eyes that skipped past me like I was a lamp. "Let's get my stuff," he said, already halfway down the hall. "Kitchen first," I answered, keeping my voice low and even. "Personal items only, per the list." He yanked the mixer cord, and I felt my insides flinch. Paula read from the sheet. "Mixer is Marlene's. Blender is yours." He stared at me, then at the blue sticky note that said, "Mine." His laugh came out tight. "Since when do Post-its own things?" "Since we wrote it down together or you declined to," I said. The urge to soften rose like a tide. I let it wash past and set my feet. Lorraine hovered, then performed a sigh for the doorway audience. "This is cruelty to a pregnant woman," she announced to the porch, loud enough for the hedges to hear. Mr. Bixby tipped his cap. "Ma'am, we are keeping this quiet," he said, not unkind, and the street seemed to lean closer, but not step in. Before, a sentence like hers would have bent me into apologies. Now it hit, then fell. I picked up the bin photo and set it on the counter. Mom's winter things. The coil heater like a little red threat, even when cold. Lorraine's mouth blinked shut. Trent grabbed a stack of hoodies, a box of shoes, the blender. He tried the microwave next. Paula's finger touched the line on the page. Shared. Stays. He muttered something I chose not to collect. The house smelled like cardboard dust and lemon cleaner. My palms were damp, the purse strap a warm stripe across my shoulder. When he reached for the antique mixing bowl, the yellow one my mother used for Sunday rolls, my throat burned. I put my hand on the rim, gentle, firm. "That is mine," I said. He held on a second too long, then let go, the ceramic ringing soft as a bell when it settled. Aubrey gasped. Not a dramatics gasp, a real one, sharp, then a long, shaky exhale. I was at her side before I knew I had moved, counting with her, smelling her shampoo and the salt of worry on her skin. "It passes," she whispered. "It passes." I rubbed the heel of my hand over the ache in my chest and looked at my son. "Your wife needs you calm," I said. The words came out steady as a plumb line. He looked at her then, really looked, and something young flickered through his anger, like a porch light trying to catch. We finished the kitchen. In the hall, he paused at the fridge, eyeing the calendar circle in red. He smirked, but it looked tired. "You really going to run a clock on your own blood?" "I am going to run a home that feeds people without swallowing me whole," I said. The sentence felt like it had been living in me for years, waiting for a doorway. On the porch, Lorraine shifted her weight, pearls ticking faintly. "We are done for today," I told Trent when the list reached the last line. "Text me for tomorrow's window. All communication in writing." He carried his box to the car, jaw working, eyes careful not to meet the neighbors. The sun slid down behind the maples, and the cicadas turned their volume down, like someone finally found the knob. Inside, I laid the new keys on the counter. The small metal music of them felt like breath after a held note. Paula exhaled. "You held," she said. "You did not swing." I touched the yellow bowl, its cool weight steady under my palm, and realized my hands had stopped shaking. Sunday came sharp and bright, that particular kind of clear that makes every whisper feel louder. The church foyer smelled like coffee and hymnals, and the lemon oil I rub into the wooden railings each week. Shoes squeaked on tile, paper cups crackled. I felt the old reflex to smile and be smaller, to be fine. Paula touched my elbow, her palm cool and steady, and said with her eyes, "Remember." So when the first woman asked, voice pitched to Carrie, "Marlene, are you all right?" I said, "I am well. We set boundaries so the house works for everyone. Plain words, no gossip dessert." I was stacking bulletins when Lorraine sailed in like she owned the weather. Pearls flashing, friends flanking her like choir robes gone to war. She clasped the pastor's hand and began a story with too much sugar and not enough truth. Poor pregnant daughter, cruel mama, a shed said like a joke. Heat rose under my collar. Paula stepped beside me, shoulder to shoulder. The organ gave a warm-up chord, a long, soft vowel that settled in my ribs. I walked over before the tale grew legs. "Pastor," I said, "we are well. There is a written agreement at my house. No one is moving to any shed." My voice came out level, but my palms stung where my nails pressed crescents into the skin. Lorraine's smile sharpened. "She put her own son out," she said, turning to the circle, recruiting eyes. Mr. Bixby ambled up, cap in hand. "I saw a fair list and a calm pickup," he offered, easy as breathing. The air shifted. People leaned back from the cliff of a story they had been about to jump off. Then Trent came through the doors, smelling of aftershave and hot pavement. He scanned the room and latched onto the cluster around us. "You did this," he said to me, not shouting, but shaping each word like a stone. The foyer sound went thin, a sort of hush that crackles. My heart beat in my ears. I wanted to say I did not start this. I wanted to say I love you more than my own skin. Both felt like begging the ocean to be dry. "I protected my home," I said instead. "And I protected your child from a family that runs on confusion." He laughed once, brittle. "So you run it on papers." I took a breath and felt it travel all the way to the base of my spine. "Clarity is not cruelty," I said. "It is simply light." The pastor's eyes softened, and I knew he had heard enough. Lorraine's lips thinned to a thread. Paula's hand brushed mine, a small current that kept me from shaking apart. Aubrey, who had sat in a pew to rest, rose slowly and reached us with a hand pressed low on her belly. "Enough," she said, voice small but anchored. "My body hears every word." Her face had gone the color of milk. A sheen of sweat jeweled her temple. "Breathe," I whispered, and the cool foyer air felt suddenly too warm. She gripped my wrist and then startled, eyes wide. Fluid darkened her dress in a crescent that spread like a shadow at noon. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. No organ, no cups, no whispering. Then the room snapped into sound. "Car," Paula said, already moving, purse strap crossing her chest. The pastor ushered space clear with both hands, gentle and firm. Mr. Bixby held the door wide. Lorraine fluttered uselessly, words scattering, palms up as if that would catch anything. Trent went, very still, every mask sliding off at once. A boy lost and a man scared sharing the same face. My stomach dropped, cold as river water, and then heat flooded back as purpose took the wheel. I wrapped my arm around Aubrey's shoulders and felt the cold shock of her damp dress seep through my blouse, the sweet tin smell of fear, and something more. "We are going now," I said to no one and everyone. "Paula drives. Trent, grab the hospital bag." He blinked, then moved, hands finally finding a useful job. On the sidewalk, the heat pressed against my shins. Tires hissed on distant asphalt. I eased Aubrey into the back seat and slid beside her, the vinyl cool through my skirt, her fingers crushing mine, little earthquakes passing through her body. "It passes," I murmured in time with her breath. Outside, Lorraine's pearl string shivered like a small set of wind chimes. Inside, Paula's engine turned over, sure and low. The car pulled into sunlight, and every stake we had set throbbed in my pulse. Boundaries would stand. But now, the baby. The emergency entrance hissed open, and the smell of antiseptic met us like cold light. Wheels squeaked. A nurse with fast hands and soft eyes took one look and said, "Triage now." Paula parked. I stayed with Aubrey, my palm under her elbow, feeling the heat of her skin and the tremor that came and went like a tide. Trent jogged beside the gurney, breath sharp, the sharpness finally useful. The monitors found their dull thunder, a cuff squeezed, then released. The room hummed. I could taste metal at the back of my tongue, and the ghost of church coffee on my breath. The far wall clock ticked, smug and steady. I reminded myself, I did not cause time. I only chose to stop letting it run me over. A nurse asked for emergency contacts and living situation. For a beat, I felt my throat close. Old reflex. The part of me that would have erased myself to ease the form. I told the truth instead. "They are temporarily in my home under a written agreement," I said. "All decisions medical go to Aubrey." The nurse nodded, already a step ahead. Kindness that did not require me to shrink. Lorraine burst through the door with a flutter of pearls and opinions, but the charge nurse lifted one hand and the air itself seemed to hold. "Only the patient chooses who stays," she said, and the sentence went through me like clear water. A contraction rolled like a storm under Aubrey's skin. She gripped my fingers hard enough to sting, and I welcomed the sting because it meant I was here and useful. "Breathe with me," I whispered. 4 counts in, 4 counts out, my voice wobbling and then settling. Trent leaned over her, eyes raw. "I am sorry," he said, not loudly, not to win, just true. Something unclenched behind my ribs. He looked at me, then down at his shoes. "If you will put it in writing, I will follow the rules for a little pause," he murmured. "For her. For the baby." I took out my phone, the glass cool against my damp palm, and typed what my backbone could live with. Clock pauses for 7 days after discharge. No shed. No unscheduled visitors. All keys accounted for. Rent and utilities begin as written on the first day of the next month. Violations restart the clock. Paula read it over my shoulder and nodded once. A seal. Trent texted back one word. Agreed. Then he put his phone away and held his wife's hand with both of his. Hours thinned and thickened. The hospital wore its nighttime sounds, wheels, murmurs, a sudden laugh from a distant desk. I dozed upright in a chair that smelled faintly of disinfectant and old vinyl, waking each time Aubrey's breath changed. When the moment came, it came like weather breaking. The doctor's voice turned that crisp, anchoring tone. Aubrey bore down with a sound that was not a scream, so much as a river forcing its shape back through stone. My eyes blurred. Paula pressed a cup of ice chips into my hand. I held one against Aubrey's lip, and we breathed together, shivering with effort, with fear, with love. Then the room shifted. First the electric silence, then a thin, astonished cry, then the warm, stunned laughter of people watching a life decide to arrive. The baby's hair was dark and slick. The little back arched like a new leaf. Trent made a noise I had not heard since he was small, half sob, half laughter, the sound a boy makes when wonder hurts. Lorraine covered her mouth and, for once, said nothing at all. The nurse swaddled that tiny body and placed the bundle in Aubrey's arms. Aubrey looked at her child, then at me, eyes enormous, and whispered, "We will not teach this one to live on confusion." It landed inside me like a key turning. I washed my hands. The water ran warm over my wrists and brought my breath all the way down. I touched the baby's blanket with 2 fingers, light as prayer. Outside the window, the sky softened toward morning, a pearl sheen just beginning. My phone buzzed. Paula sending the signed pause, the updated pickup window, Mr. Bixby's house is quiet text. Proof and peace. On the drive home, the street was still, porches yawning awake. I unlocked my door. Lemon and linen met me. The yellow mixing bowl waited on the counter, steady as a small moon. I set the new keys beside it and felt the house breathe around me, not as a test I had to pass, but as a promise I had kept. The shed was only a shed again. My room was my room, and I, finally, was mine.